Welcome back. This is the newest episode of the Progressive Podcast. Today, me, Max Levin, and my co-host, Ben Bartlett, had the opportunity to interview the DNC delegate, Dhaaruni Sreenivas. We had a great opportunity to talk to her about her thoughts on the Biden-Mexico immigration quid pro quo. I like to call it a scandal. He calls it a quid pro quo. His word's a lot more fancy, so I like that a hell of a lot better. She also taught us how to talk to women, which I gotta say, really handy. You'd be shocked to find out it's actually just you talk to them. Who would have thought, right? But you know what? Maybe I'll publish a self-help and dating book on it. Anyways, she also talked a lot about gender politics post-COVID, a lot of good little tidbits and a lot of information she has. We're really lucky to get to interview somebody with such a hands-on knowledge and a behind-the-scenes look at all these upcoming events. It was a really great time. We're really lucky. We're really proud to have shared this with you. And this has been the Progressive Podcast. Hope you enjoy. All right, welcome back to a newest episode of Progressive. I'm here with my co-host, Ben Bartlett, and then we have the one and only Dhaaruni, who's infamous on Twitter for her hot takes. Dhaaruni, go ahead and say hi.
Okay. Hi, I'm Dhaaruni. I am a data analyst by day and hot taker sometimes also by day, but I have worked in Democratic politics before. I was a DNC delegate this year. In my spare time, I like to take really expensive Pilates classes and like Soul Cycle, and I also like spending time with my cat and my dog and my fiance who's somewhere. Yeah.
Are you a voting delegate for the DNC chair race?
Yeah, I am actually, because it kind of happened. And I'm probably gonna vote for Ben Wickler just because I think he'd be a good candidate, because he kind of broke even in Wisconsin. In 2022, he almost got Mandela Barnes over the finish line. He got Evers elected. And honestly, getting Mandela Barnes to 1% was wild because of the whole, abolish ICE stuff from 2015 and all that. I think that's the other thing. I have this whole hot take about, Midwesterners are not nearly as racist as people, will say they are. They're just, kind of xenophobic, if that makes sense. So, they're okay with people that are American and Black. They're just not okay with foreigners, which sounds weird. But it makes sense in my head. I don't know.
I think that's definitely accurate. Obama dominated in a lot of those areas in 2008. I don't know that the country suddenly got more racist.
It's complicated because I think they got a lot more xenophobic and they got a lot more anti-immigrant. But I honestly think that, even if, Kamala Harris lost, but she did better in the Midwest than she did in the Sun Belt. The Sun Belt's a lot more diverse, racially. But yeah.
So what do you think that has to say about racial depolarization? This idea that races are not becoming divided by party lines. What do you think that has to say about it?
I think a lot of times American politics gets polarized around anti-Blackness. Basically, it's basically just a lot of times as cultures assimilate into the United States, I feel like there's this idea that unless they feel like they're actively in danger, they want to vote Republican based on social issues. I was thinking about this. People will always, every time I say something about how social moderation and economic liberalism doesn't work, people will bring up Mexico. And I'm like, do you know how much wealthier the United States is than Mexico? We are not voting on material issues because we don't need to. Obviously, there's a lot of poverty and there's a lot of institutional problems with the United States, obviously. But on the whole, you are living a much higher quality of life as a middle-class American than you are as a middle-class Mexican. And that's the point. And also there's this I don't know how much you know about it, but there's a lot of hearsay behind the scenes about what was going on with Biden and AMLO and Claudia Sheinbaum, because she's AMLO's direct successor. So basically there's this TLDR that Biden made a deal with AMLO in 2023, basically, that he would start stopping migrants in Mexico so they don't come to the United States because it's election year. And in exchange, Biden doesn't raise giant flags about the corruption that's going on in Mexico with the election. I don't know the details, obviously, and a lot of this is very hush-hush in Spanish-speaking media, and my Spanish is better at reading and writing than speaking. But basically what happened is Sheinbaum won in a landslide, and she would have won anyway. She would have had a mandate anyway. But the way there was a lot of intimidation, voter intimidation, and a lot of sketchiness going on. So I would probably not use Mexico as the prime example of you can be liberal and also win big.
I think I agree with what you're saying about the U.S. is in a privileged position where they are able to vote not just simply on economic material conditions. But I'm wondering, and I've kind of been thinking about this for a while, all the polls that ask people what are their top issues going into the election, a lot of those showed inflation, obviously. So a lot of them were economic issues. What I've been wondering is how much of that is that voters know that's what they're supposed to say. They know it makes them sound smart
Yeah.
if they say that economic
Yeah,
issues is what drove their
exactly.
vote. They know they're not supposed to say it was because like some person annoyed them on TikTok or whatever. Like do you think that's true? Do you think like they're kind of lying about some of this stuff and then we take it so seriously in the aftermath of the election?
I mean, okay, so I think prices are high. Like, that's not like fake. Like, things, I get manicures. I told you this earlier. It's like dumb thing to say. I paid like $10 less for my like dip powder manicure in 2019 than I do right now. And like, my salary has gone up in the last 5 years. I can afford this. And that's obviously a luxury. But like, if you're already kind of going hand to mouth, a couple extra dollars makes a huge difference on like bread or eggs or like gasoline, which is our necessities, because most people have to drive in the United States. Like, that's just a fact of life. And I think a lot of the inflation stuff is really just polarization because they think Democrats are in power and inflation is high. So if I vote Republican, inflation will go away. But the other thing is that like, it's pretty, the thing is, you can't really expect people to understand the rate of change if inflation is going down. Like, I took calculus. I get it. I know what a derivative is. But, like, the average American does not understand that the rate of inflation is going down because things cost more than they did 5 years ago. Like,
100, and I think they fully expect deflation to happen. And that was what they wanted to
yeah,
happen.
they do. In fact, like, they expect to pay $40 for a dip powder manicure again, and they're still paying 50 something. So,
Well,
like,
but isn't that,
obviously,
I mean, that's a messaging failure, though. Like, I mean, isn't that on us to explain, like, that's not how that works? Like, I mean, you can't really expect every American to know high level, like, not even high level, but just,
it's like basic calc. But, like, yeah, but the thing is, like, I don't think telling them you got to accept this is going to work. And I don't think telling them it's worse in Europe is going to work either. Like,
right.
The reality is that, like, Democrats would be facing the political consequences of that no matter what. But given how close we got, that part is not super changeable. What is changeable is the other stuff, if that makes sense. Like, people will talk about, oh, it's an inflation election. We were just destined to lose. I'm like, maybe, but given how close we got, it's clear that even if inflation was a factor, there were like 5 other factors that we could have dealt with.
Right.
And like,
Absolutely.
inflation would have probably the hardest thing to deal with because it's out of our hands because it's like a global marketplace. But I think that's why people are sort of saying that it was an inflation election, because that's easier to say that it was out of our control than admitting that like we could have done things to like change it.
Sure. I mean, I think you're referencing that like Financial Times like thing where it's like how well the incumbent party, like and Harris doing the best of
kind
the
of,
incumbent party in 2024, right?
Yeah, exactly. The thing is, there's a lot of issues that I think, like, if you remember that View interview where Kamala was asked, is there anything different than you do than Biden? And she said nothing. And it's like James Carville, of all people, was like, no, that was the one thing she should have changed. And it's like, I agree.
That was entirely the biggest unforced error of the entire campaign, I think.
I agree.
See, in that same vein, we're talking like social positioning, right? Like you said, the changing things from Biden. Like if she had gone up there and been like, hell yeah, I do a bunch of different things, or even with that ACLU comment from 2019, it sounds like you're saying there's a lot of like social issues at play that if she could distance herself or change, that would have been a different story, right?
Social and more like immigration was a big one, obviously. All she had to do with that was say, like, Biden did these moves now. I would have done them a year ago. Like,
100%.
Whether or not it's true, she should have just said it. Like, I feel like there's a huge like balancing act Democrats have to do right now because like we've got a huge coalition, and I think it's easy to blame one part of the coalition, whether it's going to be like the neocons with Liz Cheney or blaming the progressives. It's like, but the reality is like this is everybody's like fault basically. It's like you don't really get to absolve responsibility just because the part of your coalition that like you don't like has this like the thing is immigration wasn't really a Bernie Sanders issue, as you can tell by his tweet today. But the thing is, Bernie Sanders' coalition is way to the left of him. And they all want, like, well, okay, but here's the thing. They hate tech, which kind of leads into what you were saying with H-1Bs. One reason a lot of the progressives are really like, Bernie is right about this is because they don't like tech. Like, I'm sorry to say it, but, like, I'm a scion of big tech. Right?
I thought friend of the pod, Matt Yglesias, had a good take on that today where he said, like, this is entirely wrong on the merits, but it's exactly why Bernie would have won in 2016.
I don't think Bernie would have won in 2016, but like that's because
we could debate, but I think that's why he would have been a stronger candidate in 2016 than he was in say 2020. Like
I think
after
he was stronger in
taking some of these
2016 than
positions.
2020, but like my whole thing that I keep on saying I was going on earlier is that I think people are a lot less economically liberal than progressives think they are, because like when we say Trump is like populist, we mean that he's not going to kill Social Security. It doesn't mean he's gonna tax people up the wazoo to get Medicare for all and social democracy. It means he's not gonna touch Social Security, which people perceive as earned. So
I think the issue polling post 2016 really was a huge thing that kind of doomed the Democratic Party. All the issue polling showing 75% support for Medicare for all and things like that, where it's obviously entirely based on how you frame the question. I think a lot of that
just
stuff,
don't mention killing private insurance, and then people will say yes.
Yeah.
But it's isn't there that thing of all the people raising their hands where it's who wants free healthcare for everybody? And who's going to say no to that? But then you're okay, who wants to abolish the healthcare you have now and then do government insurance, and then it's going to be this huge tax we're going to levy, but it's going to be really good, we promise. It's no, most people are going to kill it then.
Yeah. It's I don't know, this this sounds really silly, but I'm an English major, and I was a big lit person in high school and college and stuff. So the Hamlet to be or not to be soliloquy just talks about whether it's better to be alive or in the undiscovered country of death. And basically they'd be okay, I'll stay alive. And basically this is the whole thing with healthcare. It's do you want your current healthcare plan, which has its pluses and minuses, or do you want to go into the undiscovered country of full government healthcare and not know what it's going to be like? And people will generally pick the evil they know to the unknown, if that makes sense. That's a weird metaphor.
I was a big Bernie guy, and I was a big Bernie guy in 2020, and I remember the arguments they were making in favor of it. And one of them was it actually overall will cost you less money. Yes, we'll raise taxes over $1,000 a year on average, but if you take out what you're paying for private insurance, it'll actually save you money in the long run. And I think that is, regardless of whether it's true on the merits, is totally similar to what we're talking about with inflation, where is that really going to be something you can effectively message and convince people of and explain the nuance of it when they see oh, he's going to raise taxes $10,000? That sounds terrible. I think a lot of lefty
people
progressive
having income though.
Mm-hmm.
People having disposable income. They don't really. The thing is it looks better to have more money in the hand than to see it being used and not be able to know how the sausage is made, basically. For instance, I know exactly where my salary is going to health insurance because I have a salary job. I know what I'm paying for healthcare. I know I know what my taxes are being cut every month. I know what going into my HSA, and it's but the thing is, here's the thing. I've got private job healthcare, and it's yeah, I think it's pretty. But the thing is, we do have a public health option under Obamacare. But I think the thing is, the real issue is that a bunch of states haven't expanded Medicaid, which we know which states those are.
For the people who don't, can you spell it out maybe in big letters?
Yeah, the Republican-run states with Republican governors who don't want to expand Medicaid because they don't want the poorest people in their state to have health care.
Wait, but I thought they were just being fiscally conservative, right? That's just going to save money, right?
Oh, yes, because clearly letting people get horribly unhealthy and have heart disease is great for the economy.
And my understanding is it costs the states nothing, right? It's entirely paid for by the federal government.
Yeah.
So it's literally just
it's already appropriated. Yeah, they finally expanded it in a bipartisan way in North Carolina last year. And then they also passed an abortion ban. So
naturally.
Hopefully.
Well, so hold on, let me get this straight. So essentially the federal government is saying, hey, I want to help you pay for more people to have better care. And these red Republican leaning
care
states,
in general, yeah.
Yeah, they're basically saying I don't want free money for my citizens. I'm just make sure I'm getting that right.
Kind of, yeah.
That's really fucked up.
It's not even. I don't even think it's saving the federal government money because it's
not because it's appropriated anyway. But yeah, it's I don't remember the states off the top of my head, but I know Mississippi is one of them, and I know Florida is one of them.
It's pretty wild. Florida's one of them, considering how 50-50 they were for a while post Obamacare. Still,
Florida is just a funny state. My college ex-boyfriend's from down there. He's from Palm Beach County, so I know a fair amount about Florida politics. They are basically just single issue anti-socialism voters. And it's just funny because they think that anybody who's on good terms with Bernie Sanders is a socialist, which is the funniest thing ever. I have this whole theory that Hillary did so well in Florida compared to the Midwest because they knew she did not like Bernie Sanders. I'm pretty sure that's it because she got 70 something.
Well, no, it's is that what sunk their governor race in 2018? Because the guy was a big Bernie guy.
Yeah. Probably Gwen Graham would have easily won, and it's and the thing is that governor's race and losing that Senate seat was just the because
that's the craziest what if butterfly effect of
pretty much
recent years.
and,
that's crazy to think about.
And the thing is, like, the other thing is Ron DeSantis is terrible for, like, some reasons. Like, the abortion ban, the LGBT stuff is, like, crazy. But as a governor, like, on economics, he's not a bad governor in many ways. Like, he builds housing, for one thing.
Yes.
Same with Greg Abbott. Like, the thing is, like, I went and did some deep diving. Greg Abbott is super popular with the Indian American community. Like, he randomly jets off to India, and they love that. Because, like, it's like home, it's like retail politics. He, like, goes and appeals to their communities by, like, jetting off to India and being besties with Modi because he's apparently very popular, which my parents don't even like Modi. My dad's like, I don't like this guy. Please stop. Like, yeah, my parents are very Americanized, though, so.
Obviously, a lot of the shifts are national, but I do think it's crazy just how much a state like Florida has shifted after 2020 under the reign of
Mr. DeSantis, yeah.
Yeah, some of that
it's
housing
just
stuff.
COVID politics screwed with everyone's brain. They messed with Elon. Elon was endorsing Democrats, like, for years.
Okay,
and then it's
but
like...
with Elon, though, like, how much you want to bet, though? The fact that they snubbed him at the electric vehicle thing, I really believe he's just really pissed about that. And then after that, he just spent too much time during his, like, breakup. And he's like, you know what? I'm divorced now. I'm going to get into the whole, like, divorced dad, like, I hate my ex-wife kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like, it's funny though, but like I think it's funny that Trump mixed on H-1Bs and H-2Bs. Because like, I don't think he's hiring H-1Bs to clean his hotels, but he's hiring H-2Bs. And honestly, as somebody that like loves tech and innovation and stuff, I'm just going to let him say that.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I'm like, the whole thing with H-1Bs is like, hey, let's bring our best and brightest here. And like, let's bring more of them. And I'm like, have you seen the thing where it's like Americans have been born abroad, but we have to bring them home?
Yeah,
like,
I kind of like that.
I
like,
love
my parents are like that. Like, my dad was ranked second in all of India when he was applying for graduate school in computer science. There's like, it's like, what, 1.5 million people take it. He was ranked second, like, number 2 in the country. And like,
wow.
Yeah, he got his like pick of like grad schools. He went to the best one in India for computer science. And like, the funny thing is, he wasn't even a computer science undergrad. He was a mechanical engineering undergrad. And then he just like taught himself computer science in the summer, took that exam. And it's been like 30-something years, and he's still mad about the question he missed.
One question?
Well, no, it's like he thinks that a question was graded wrong, which is why he was ranked second instead of first. And it's like, it's kind of funny. My dad's a great guy, but like, it's funny though. Like when I got my SAT scores back, I missed one question too, because, I missed one question. My dad just like looks at my scores like, you could have gotten this question right if you just focused more. Because like, I was like, you know what? You're probably right, because it was probably just a focus issue. Because when I got a 2380, because I took the 2400 scale. So I got a 2380, so I missed one question. And, at that point, it was just a human error. It wasn't like I didn't know the answer. This like makes sense in my head. Sorry, this was completely random. But like, point is, my dad's a very smart guy. My mom's equally smart in totally different ways. But like, it's kind of offensive to me almost the way they talk about it. It's like, do you think that we're the lesser people because like we came to America? I don't know what to tell you. Like my parents, you can't do what my dad does. You can't do what my mom does. That's why they have jobs where they get paid decent money. And like, we're also American citizens at this point. You can't deport us.
Right.
Well, what did you make of the whole discourse? The Republican response and the Elon dynamics, does any of that surprise you? And what does it tell you about the next 4 years at all? Is there anything there? Like, is he just going to cave to Elon and everything? Is there any lessons we can learn from it?
Trump, like I said, Trump is an old school Democrat in some ways, in the sense that he's more xenophobic in many ways. He is literally ecstatic that all these like non-white people are voting for him. Maybe there are like certain Republicans with certain nativists who are very against it and like, they think these part of the coalitions are lesser. But like Trump is the kind of guy that would go to a Diwali celebration and be like, oh, what is this? Mm-hmm. I don't even mean this in a complimentary way, to be honest. Like, I think a lot of immigrant cultures are very right-wing in many ways, like in socially conservative ways. But like, he'd be very happy, like, votard pour Trump. First of all, it's not votard because that's an infinitive. But the thing is, like, he loves that shit.
Well, the song was a banger. Like, can you knock him? It was pretty good.
Yeah. No, but what I'm saying is, like, he's not the one that's like, in a weird way, like, he is less nativist than like a lot of the other, like, than the rank and file in many ways. Like, I don't think that he's the kind of, like, I'm sure, like, I remember this whole thing, like, I don't think he's bullshitting when he says he thinks that he's going to, like, open the door to the most bright and beautiful, but I think he puts Stephen Miller in charge, who wants to deport me, so.
Interesting. So do you think it's like that, like last in the room? Because I keep hearing that like theory, and I always wondered, I'm like, do we really think Trump is just kind of the guy that he puts whoever's the last person to talk to him, that's what he takes away from a conversation?
I don't know.
Weird.
I think he's got like strong opinions on a lot of stuff, but he like does not understand stuff like big tech. I'm sorry, he does not understand big tech. So I feel like he'll just defer to Elon on that, and Elon wants GDP to go brr. So Elon wants the H-1Bs because like who do you think runs Tesla? Who do you think does the back end coding for Tesla?
Right.
You were saying that he's like less xenophobic than some of the rank and file, and obviously like, the reverse of that is a dynamic we've seen like with some Democrats where like a lot of the like
electives
far
are
left wing
definitely
of the
more
party.
progressive than like.
Yeah, absolutely. But even at the other end, like obviously there's some of like the very online types who are further left. Do you think there's any chance that we see any sort of like meaningful backlash against Trump by some of that like far right wing of the coalition, or are they just always going to worship Trump? So like it's kind of impossible. He could be as far left as he wants and not risk like pissing off that end of the coalition.
Well, the thing is, he's very good at telling people to shut up. Like, when he talked about how he's not going to, like, sign a national abortion ban, how it should be left to the states, the Susan B. Anthony Society was like, yeah. And he just was like, fuck off. And, like, that's literally what happened because they tried to pitch a fit about it. And he was just like, stop talking. I don't care what you think. And, like, honestly, for the good of the country, that's a good thing because I would rather there not be a national abortion ban. But, like, I think in a way that kind of diffused the issue in many ways, especially since like there was an abortion ballot prop in Arizona, in Florida too, and the Florida one failed, but it got 57% of the vote. It got the same amount of the vote as Trump did, because there's a lot of pro-choice Republicans out there, and like there's been arguments about how like Democrats should get rid of these ballot props because it gives people a permission structure to vote Republican. But I honestly like the way I see it is like people should vote how they see fit. And if they agree with the Republican Party on everything except abortion, like, I get it. Like, I would probably do the same thing. Like, let's be real. If there was, like, some ballot prop on something totally different, like, I don't know. Like, I would, like, let's say there was, like, I don't know, like a ballot prop on, like, legalizing heroin or something. I would vote no on that and then vote for Democrats still. Like, that's how I see it. Like, I don't know. Like, it's obviously not the same thing, but, like, that's what
I agree that it makes sense, like from a voter perspective. But do you agree that like that was the effect of those ballot measures?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Because the thing is, look at Florida. Kamala got like 43% of the vote, and the ballot prop got 57% of the vote, and it failed only because the Florida legislature put up a 60% vote threshold. And like, I'm sorry, but
I think my favorite anecdote about that is that I think it actually passed on a ballot measure. And if I recall correctly, that ballot measure only needed 50% to pass, which is hilarious to me. But
yeah, and it just like it's one of those things. Like, you remember Trump never said how he voted on that? They kept on asking him, and he never said it. First, he was like, first he was like, the Florida abortion ban is too restrictive. And then he got yelled at by like the Susan B. Anthony Society. And then he was like, oh, well, I'm just not going to say how I'll vote. And he just never said it. And I don't know how he voted because I don't really care. But like,
that is funny. That's kind of one of the only times I can remember him kind of like caving to the groups or whatever. Kind of like,
yeah, that's the most he's
like a
caved.
Democrat in that way.
The most he's ever caved is basically him saying like, I'm not going to say how I voted. He still didn't come out and say he like voted against it.
And that reminds me of something else with Kamala this time around. Maybe in and of itself, I don't think this mattered much, but I think it's representative of a lot of the issues with her campaign. When she refused to say how she was going to vote on Prop 36 in California.
And that passed with like 70% of the vote.
Passed with like 70% of the vote, and yet she still felt like it was like too risky to take the moderate position on that and risk pissing off Democrats. And like, I feel like that shows how out of touch a lot of the campaign people were with where actual Democratic voters were and regular voters too. But
well, here's the other thing. They talk about how the media apparatus is like right wing, and the reality is that the media is not right wing. The reality is just that left-wing media doesn't like Democrats the way right-wing media likes Republicans. The point is, if Kamala said she was going to vote like the 70% on the like the tough on crime position, she would get reamed by left-wing media for like being a bad person TM. But like, Trump is not going to get killed by right-wing media the same way because the right-wing media wants Republicans to win no matter what. And left-wing media like wants Democrats to win, but they want them to win in the sense that they want them to be like way more left-wing than they actually are because the voters are not left-wing. So like, that's the problem. Like, the thing is, the media is left-wing. It's just not pro-Democrat.
That's an interesting point because I hadn't considered that calculus where the benefit that she gets from taking the 70% of issue stance, like, how much positive press is that actually going to generate versus how much it would have pissed off all these lefty
Well, I was gonna say-
media
The Nation?
types?
The
Yeah.
Nation, the New
It's one of those
Statesman,
things
whatever.
where, it's kind of like Matt Iglesias had a good post that we'll link below, talking about how like the groups used to support Obama, like the progressives and whatnot, but now during Biden, it's like I always called it the Democrat double punch, where like if you go too moderate or too far right in any way, you're gonna get punched from one direction and you get punched from other. If you go not right enough, the right is still mad at you for not going further, and then the left's really mad. Whatever you do, you're just getting fucked. Like there's just no winning.
Yeah, and I
Yeah,
think
like,
that's where the fact that the media is left wing also hurts, because they're more interested in the left being mad. Like they're in those left
Interfactional, like,
ecosystem. Yeah, and they're more tuned in there, where they like that's what they're seeing on their Twitter feed, so that's what they're reporting about. And
Yeah, I try to stay out of. I used to be way more like, more into like bashing people that I disagreed with in the coalition. But then my account got bigger, so I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna not do it. If I do it, I dunk on it and go away. I just don't like engaging with people yelling at me. It's like, it's a good move, because if you notice, I don't fight people very much. I'm just like, okay, bye. And like, it's a good move. I
It's the way
just
to
don't
do
want to
it.
get that online. I don't want to get that online.
A one-person war. Did you ever see like the Will Stansel fights where he was just like oh my, that was so
I can't
fun.
stand him. Oh my God, I can't stand him. He's just so like, I don't care if he's right. He's annoying about it.
yeah,
Which like is, I'm sorry, but that's like the whole thing people say about Democrats, which kind of segues into our next point. Like, one of the things that when I was originally talking to you guys was like about the gender stuff. How much like are men really mad at Democrats because of like women succeeding? And also Corey Whalen, who's a right-wing influencer type, she had this tweet that says Trump Vance is the ultimate expression of white male identity politics. It's like if truck nuts was a presidential ticket. And that's kind of like, yeah. And like, I kind of expanded on and be like, it's not white male identity politics, it's male identity politics.
absolutely.
Given how many Hispanic men voted for Trump, and even Asian men, like, fun fact, the only demographics that did not shift right were Black women and Asian women. So I'm good here. And college-educated white men, actually. Like, you guys stayed pretty consistent. But yeah, but the ones that did shift right were like everybody else. So.
Well, but like, okay, so if it's everybody else though, wouldn't that kind of mean that it's more than just like?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
It's more than just gender.
Well, yeah, because I'm saying it's like we're living in this weird like you spend all this time in college talking about like race and gender and class. It's like most people kind of just lump themselves in this like big group of like, I don't know, I'm just an American. Like I don't know, like they don't care. Like nobody cares. They're like, oh, your intersectionality of being oppressed, and you're like, okay,
Yeah,
I'm mad that
What?
eggs are too expensive. Like, well, I don't give a shit what that means.
there's
You know what I
there's
mean?
no
I mean, like,
intersectional solidarity.
Yeah, and the
Sure.
thing is, obviously there are things that matter, but like I've said this before, the most shit I've gotten online is for being a woman, which is 51% of the population. It's not for being Indian even. The most, when people yell at me for being Indian, it's because it's from like Hindu nationalists who yell at me for not being a Hindu nationalist. Or I get yelled at by people that think I'm a Hindu nationalist, and I'm like, I'm not even Hindu. I'm an atheist. Like, I don't know what this is talking about. My fiance is like not even Indian.
Mm-hmm.
So like, it's
Yeah,
just really funny. They
I
write
think
fan
people are way
fiction
more
about me.
comfortable. People are way more comfortable being sexist. Like I think there's so much casual, like
It's
sexism
so
I notice,
weird.
and especially online.
I think like this. I mean, is it just like a?
Yeah, like what I'm saying is it's like I feel like the right wing shift is not really just unique to men. Women are doing it too. And obviously there is some like uniquely male aspects of this into the terms of like electorally. I think that there's definitely this vibe that Democrats are more for women than for men. But on the societal level, I'm pretty sure that the right wing shift is like both genders. If that makes
I was gonna
sense.
say, wasn't it like in aggregate, pretty much everybody aside from like
Yeah,
two or three
pretty much.
groups that you said?
Yeah, pretty much everybody. And it's like there's this whole thing. Like I had that text from my friend on our show notes. It's like the thing is the party was perceived as targeting women because like, but the thing is, the other thing is that like I think this is like a consequence of the staffer class being like more women, and like a lot of the men in it are gay. And a lot of times, like I was just joking about it. Like I did a space with Armand a couple of weeks ago on a couple of days before Christmas. Or Christmas Eve, actually. And I was saying, like, I'm okay with white male identity politics with guys that can pull at sports bars. Like, if you're going to hire staffers, you can do that. But, like, and the thing is, because there are a lot of white male staffers on Dem campaigns. They're just not really the kind of staffers that appeal to the groups that we're losing.
They're not the
If that
Barstool
makes sense.
demographic at all.
Yeah, they're not like Dave Portnoy. And, like, people were talking about Hassan Piker. I'm like, do you realize who Hassan Piker is? Like, maybe I'm wrong for this, but I prefer Dave Portnoy to Hassan Piker, and I don't even like Dave Portnoy. I think Hassan Piker goes to brothels. Like, Dave Portnoy does not need to do that. That sounds horrible, but like, I would rather a guy be a fuckboy for free than like pay women to have sex with you.
Yeah. And I want to talk a little bit more about that. Why do we think that Democrats have this image? Obviously, we talked a little bit about like the staffer class. Like, how do we kind of undo that? And what do we trace as some of the, say, going back to around 2016, 2015, what led to this like growth of young conservative men and the vibes of Gen Z men being pretty conservative? How do you track that?
So 2 things. First of all, I think that one thing is that we're not good at diagnosing the problem. I think people in the Harris campaign legitimately thought that putting Tim Walz as VP would help bleed these issues. But what I said is that, like, I feel like people just don't really understand why Walz is off-putting to people. And, like, I like Walz's policies, especially, like, on childcare and the child tax credit and stuff. Like, I'm big on, like, you know, like, I really like the idea of, like, helping people have kids as many kids as they want, even though I'm, like, anti-natalist because I think they're weird. But the point is, like, I think that that's probably the area I'm most economically liberal on, so I like what he did with that. But at the same time, like, the vibes were so off-putting. It's like, he's the kind of guy that's like, would probably think you're a bad person. Like, he gives me the kind of person who would like talk shit about you with his wife, but would not say it to your face. If that makes sense. It's like the Midwestern passive-aggressive thing. Yeah, it's like, I don't need that. Like, you guys have talked to me for like an hour right now. Do I really seem like the kind of person who would like talk shit behind your back and then be nice to your face? Like, no. Like, I don't want to do that. Like, and it's just like, and it's like, oh, I want to keep the peace. I want to like keep things calm. But it's like a very effeminate way to like approach things, like stereotypically. Like,
yeah, and I think Walz has some obviously like inherently masculine things, being like the
of
football.
Of course, yeah.
But I think even talking about the staffer class, even when Democrats have a candidate at the top who is like that, I think they don't know how to take advantage of it from like a structural level or even a campaign level necessarily, because the staffer class doesn't share those, like having coached football, having played football, whatever. I think the biggest example
Walz
of that
is a good candidate though.
Really?
And I don't think he is necessarily, but I don't think they helped him. Like, I think the biggest example of this, it drives me insane, is the tweet that they posted from his account, allegedly from Tim Walz,
God.
when he did the AOC live stream. It's a AOC can run a mean pick six, and I call an audible on a play. And we both know that if you take the time to draw up a playbook, you're going to use it. That, I lost my mind for like a week when I saw that.
I remember that. Like, I'm not a football person. I'm not really like a sports person beyond, like, I get really into March Madness because I like winning brackets. But yeah, no, I like winning things. But like, anyway, the point is, like, even I knew that was weird to say, and I don't know. Like,
would, and you don't need like any football knowledge to know. That's like, you need the most to ask 3 people in a room who are guys, and I'm sure someone would be like, looks a little off. Like, I don't understand how that tweet gets sent out.
Yeah, because the thing is, it didn't just get sent out. It got approved by 4 people and then got sent out.
Well, I was gonna say,
I worked for Del Bene. Like, it gets approved by like 4 people and then they send it out.
I was gonna say, when I did my Hill internship, it's like for tweets, it's like the intern starts it, then it goes to like it goes to like the press assistant, then it'll go to the comms director, then to like the member themselves to approve it. It's like that went through 4 layers minimum. Like that 4 people looked at that and said, yeah, that's fine. Like,
I would have looked at that and I'd be like, just go watch Rudy or something. Seriously.
Yes. And I remember when they picked Tim Walz, people were so excited about how we can send him on every sports show. We can send him on Rogan, Bill Simmons, whatever. Like, not even the tweet. His one big sporting campaign thing was a live stream with AOC on Twitch. And I don't know that I like AOC, but that feels like that's not exactly like targeting the people they're thinking they need to target.
Also, the other thing that really kind of bugs me is, like, this kind of goes off my first bullet point. People will be like, oh, the reason men are shifting right is because women are more, like, successful at school. And I was just like, I don't know if that's it. Because here's the other thing. school is like a very masculine institution. Like women were not allowed at a lot of colleges for a very long time. And the other thing is the gotcha that people always use every time I point this out is like, if like with girls are bad at math and science, do you like support special treatment for them? And I just look at them, I'm like, no, I think they should work harder. Like, I'm sorry, like I'm not naturally good at everything, but I did like study. I'm really bad at physics. I sat down and I studied and I got like a B- in electricity and magnetism in college, and it was like the worst time of my life. I like hated it. But it's not easy for me, and it's like you work, and it's like the thing is people are like, I have ADHD. Boys can't sit still. I'm like, I have ADHD too. I can still not disrupt the class even if I'm not paying attention. Girls who are inattentive get away with like being inattentive. And boys who are causing trouble for others don't get away with it just because it's making everybody else's life harder. But the thing is, obviously, we need to like address these issues, but I don't think it's like not a gendered issue really. Some people just struggle.
Like it crosses because both then inattentive. Like you're just. I always called it being allergic to like things I'm not interested in, and so it's like it's not like it's a boy girl thing.
The other thing that really bugs me is like Richard Reeves is this guy that gets like bandied around a lot by this like group that thinks that like boys are oppressed because they have to do their homework. And the way that he frames his argument drives me crazy, because like he frames it in a way that like conservatives and people that are like mad at women like doing well in school or whatever understand that he's blaming women for it, but there's like a plausible denial. Any liberal woman that calls it out gets called like a hysterical bitch who like doesn't care about men. And I'm like, no, I think that men are perfectly capable of like succeeding in the same environment women are. And obviously it's harder for some people, but that's a gender neutral statement. Like not everybody's going to be good at everything. Like while I think that like a lot of the girls are bad at math stuff is like a self-fulfilling prophecy, it's the same thing of saying like boys can't stay still. It's like, really? Can they not stay still? Like even if they can't stay still, do they have to like be harassing the girl next to them and poking her with a pencil?
Yeah.
That's very different than
I think it's ironic because I think a lot of these same people who are hypothetically pissed off by this and then voting for Republicans in response, like they're the same types who would have probably opposed any sort of program to like help women in STEM or whatever.
Oh yeah, they think that women in STEM programs are the reason that we should start voting Republican. I'm like, okay, so first of all, you realize that you don't have to do women in STEM programs, right? Plenty of girls just don't do them. Like, and the thing is like, girls are still underrepresented in a lot of STEM subjects despite those programs, because like there's this whole social like atmosphere that like girls are bad at math, girls are like illogical, girls are this, girls are that. And I think it's really like, it's something that it's really important to me. Like STEM education is one of my like pet interests. Like I hate the way they talk about math and stuff. Like I don't know if you read my Noah Smith piece. I talk a lot about like the whole Asian shifting right because of academics and like not like the algebra in the 8th grade stuff. I had a great public school education. I took 2 years of calculus in high school. I took algebra in the 7th grade. And it's like, I think every kid that wants that opportunity should be able to do that. And that's like, not everybody's good at math. Not everybody's good at like history, but people should have the opportunity to be good at everything, if that makes sense. And like, I don't think this is gendered. So the fact that people make it gendered is just like, what is your agenda here? Like, are you trying to say that girls shouldn't have these opportunities? Or he also makes this like horrific argument that drives me insane that like men feel bad they're no longer the providers of the household. And I'm like, so let me get this straight. You think that men feel bad because women have to like them and aren't with them for money? But like you guys are guys. Like, would you want a woman to be with you for money?
Like, I agree with what you're saying, but part of me wonders like, I kind of feel like maybe there are some people who do feel that way. Like, I don't think they're like right to, obviously, but like, I don't know.
No, I agree. I completely agree with you. I think there are people that feel that way. But I think the thing is, if you're going to frame it as like a social practice issue of like, I feel like the underlying comment is like, how are women to blame for this? And why is the implication that like, I think the implication that Richard Reeves and his ilk make is that like, it's women's fault. But I'm like, what are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to like stop doing our homework so we don't do as well in life? Like, are we supposed to like not have jobs? Are we supposed to like, the thing is they want like a regression, but they won't say they want a regression. It's like, and honestly, I do agree that we need to like be better at like noticing when kids aren't paying attention and stuff and noticing when they're like hyperactive. It's like, But at the same time, I do think that it's like a little bit infantilizing to pretend that like men are like somehow like inferior to women in the sense that they can't do certain things that they've been doing for centuries. All those schools, like the high-end schools of like British boarding schools, were all boys. They all had to like sit down and do their homework and like to go, you know, like the thing is like it's not just like a new thing that boys can't focus or boys can't do things, because like they can do things. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, well, taking this a little broader, talking about how you think this is kind of more gender neutral. You were talking about how like you don't think kind of Democrats' image issue is like necessarily directly related to like feminism or like girl bosses, whatever. That it's more like tone policing and the perceived wokeness, and that's kind of gender neutral. Could you talk a little bit about that?
I think that girl bosses and like Hillary Clinton TM are like the easy bugaboo. They're like the easy thing to blame of like why Democrats are losing men. But at the end of the day, if you talk to guys, they don't bring up stuff like AOC's power suits. They bring up stuff like, here's the thing, they bring up Me Too. They hate Me Too. Like that was on my thing. It's like, that is the one thing that I think is super gendered that's making men go right. Because like the thing is, it kind of backfired because like they kind of viewed Me Too, especially like lower status men TM, they viewed it as like an attack on like by higher status women onto them, being like, oh, they're gonna accuse us falsely and like ruin our lives. Even though like the reality is that like it doesn't work to ruin their lives. Like the Brett Kavanaugh thing also drives me insane, obviously, because like Christine Blasey Ford didn't want to testify. She just had to because of Ryan Grimm and doxing her, basically. You know this. Yeah, TLDR, Ryan Grimm got her name for The Intercept. He made her name public, and so she had to testify so she doesn't get like arrested for perjury. Anyway, but the point is, like, it also didn't work. That man's on the Supreme Court for life. Like,
yeah. I wonder, do you think men or just voters in general kind of connect Me Too almost to like cancel culture in a way where they're like, they kind of lump it all together as like, I'm going to get canceled by the left, whether it's for like saying something wrong like, or for Me Too stuff?
Yeah, I think so. And also, like, even other women are more likely to sympathize with, like, the boys and men in their lives than they are with, like, strange women. Like, Gia Tolentino, who I dislike for totally other reasons. I just find her very annoying. She started off being, like, very pro-Me Too, and then one of her friends was accused. And she wrote this, like, whole defense piece about, like, not jumping on the bandwagon. I was like, Gia, you gotta be consistent, dude. You can't be like... I was pretty, like, circumspect the entire time. I was like, this is going to backfire because of the way it's going about. And also, like, you got to be very specific about what you're accusing people of. Mm-hmm. Like, that's what I don't know if you guys have seen like the viral threads accusing random people about like sexual violence and stuff.
Yeah, the ones that just come up here and you're like, I have no clue like what this is or who this is. And
it stresses me out because the thing is, I do believe something untoward happened. I do believe bad stuff happened. And the thing is, like, what bugs me, because like I have female friends and like I know that like the thing is, I know that like sexual violence occurs and it's like very prevalent. But what bugs me is that like, I don't know, like it's just like I wish there was like a way to like figure this out without doing so publicly, because like I don't know if the public court of law is good for like actually getting justice, if that makes sense. And like I don't think there's like easy solution to this. But yeah, like I don't know. It's also just like they think that a lot of men decided that women were out to get them, and they saw like Me Too as giving women power over men. But of course, it like didn't work. That's the thing. But it still made everybody mad. So it's like the worst of all possible worlds.
Interesting. Well, I mean, do you also see it as like the other side of the backfire, as in the large segments of men that are like, oh, well, I don't want to get caught up in this, like this. I don't want to get doxxed. I don't even like that. I call it like the self-induced incels, where they're like, I don't want to get canceled. I don't want to get Me Too'd. So I'm just not even going to like talk to women. And then they involuntarily like make themselves incels. You know what I mean? The incel. Incel.
Is that like a real thing? I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Like, I mean, again, mostly anecdotal, but like you hang out and like, I don't want to say like STEM, because obviously you're in STEM, but like certain circles, like you have a large segment of men that just straight up like don't associate with women. They're like, I like either they claim to be afraid of them. They don't know how to talk to them. They do it partly because they're like, I don't know how to approach them. You don't know how to ask them out because they don't want to make them uncomfortable. And you're like, yeah, they're like self-induced. They put themselves in this own little like, I don't even know how to call it. Like it's like literally a self-induced incel. Like it's the weirdest thing.
Fine.
Well, yeah, I think it's a lot of like, oh, you can't go and ask a woman out in person these days. Like oh, they're with woke. Like I think there's kind of that has been a lot of people like self-induce that where it reminds me of when people are like, oh, you couldn't make this show today, or oh, you can't say that today, and they're literally posting something that came out this year or like was written this year where it's kind of like self-induced. They're canceling themselves
like,
almost.
it's just funny because I met my fiance on Twitter, but like I was single before, and like guys came up to me at bars. I talked to them. It was fine. It was never. I think it was a very different. I think there's like mutually exclusive universes. Like the people that are like involuntary, like self-induced incels are very different than the other parts of the population. Because like
100%.
This is all brand new to me. Because like I would just go to a bar and talk to a guy. And, like,
well, right, but for like these people, it's like they're like
yeah,
naturally
exactly.
they, you know what I mean? And it's like they kind of just, and like I like my
social
favorite
media.
One, yes,
Yeah.
but the gym cells, those guys is like literally they just work out, go online, play video games, and it's like they just don't talk. Like they won't talk to the other gender. Like they will not engage, and so like they create this own universe of like I can't even go up and say hello to a woman because otherwise I'll get like me too. And it's like, dude, just go up and be like shake her hand, be like, hey, like my name's like whatever. Like it's not that hard. Like
Yeah, just like, okay, I will say this. Like, if a guy comes up to me in my like $35 Pilates reformer class and tries to talk to me, I'm like, please go away. Like, that's like, don't do that. But like before or after class, like obviously I'm not single, but like if you go up to a woman and just be like, hi, what's up? She'll talk to you. It's not
Right.
that hard. Like,
or you could just talk to her as like a person instead of being like, oh my god, I have to have the best opening line ever, and it has to be like,
yeah, just be
like,
like,
dude,
just start a funny conversation about the cartoon character on your sweatshirt or something
Exactly.
stupid like that. Like,
yeah,
you'd be surprised. Like, I feel like a lot of people are just surprised at like how easy it is to talk to people once you get on it. Like, I'm a very like nerdy person, TM. Like, there's like me and my fiance have a running bit about like how I'm gonna turn our kids into nerds, and he wants them to watch baseball, and I'm like, no, they're gonna be watching dragon shows, and he's
I was
like,
gonna say, was this your Game of Thrones? Dude, I love Game of Thrones. That was so
yeah, like I have like, I'll just show you really quickly. I joke about how I was like fandom infamous and got canceled on Reddit and stuff. It's so funny bit of lore. This is my Cersei Lannister doll. I got her in 2013.
2013. Wow. That's
She like,
nuts.
Pop.
yeah, she's very cute. But anyway, the point is like, you can be into fandom stuff. You can be into nerd stuff, and you can still like learn to talk to people, if that makes sense. I think it's a little different though, because I think COVID made everything worse again. Because like
Yeah.
I grew up before COVID, so I was like, I had a life while I was fighting people on Reddit.
Mhm.
But like now you have people that are just online 24/7 and they just don't like go out.
Well, I think social media kind of creates these feedback circles with a lot of like the relatability content. I actually think this, expanding on it, like I won't rant, but I think it relates to a lot of the
No, of
mental health
course.
stuff too. But when you were talking about like gym cells and stuff, I think that like my TikTok feed every winter, like I always get tons of that content where it's like going to the gym
Winter
and then yeah, winter arc. Me when I get my gym for the day and rot in bed for 8 hours. Like I think it sort of like creates where it's like, oh, me so relatable, but it kind of makes it aspirational almost.
Yeah.
Like
I don't know.
be
It's not really
lying.
related, but
I mean, it's pretty related because like I think a lot of this started because of COVID, right? People are
Yeah.
at home and you have nothing better to do, but then they forgot like, oh, the world is open, by the way, and then they become this like paralyzed. I don't want to go out. I just want to sit on my phone, and it's like, okay, dude, literally just go talk to people. You don't need to be bed rotting in bed for like that's not good for you, dude. Like, you know what I mean?
I want to talk a little bit more before we wrap up, like
Yeah,
about
of course.
Democrats, their image among young men. I was talking to a friend of mine earlier today who's he's not very like politically involved, doesn't really follow politics, but he's like vaguely conservative. He's like Catholic, whatever. But I was talking to him and I asked him like, if I say Democrat or liberal, what are some of the things that come to mind, like the negative things, why you're not in favor of them, even though you're like not very political, not like super conservative. And he was talking about how he sees Democrats as kind of weak and not
Preachy.
yeah, weak, preachy, and like he used the word beta. Kind of, he was talking more about Democratic men, I guess. But then it,
My
yeah,
God, that's
and
what I said too. I got canceled
Yeah.
for calling Tim Walz beta.
No, and I think it's very true. Like
it's not
I
even
think
just him.
it's not like
It's not just
Democratic
him, though.
women
It's like the
necessarily. It's the
vibe.
men. Yeah.
Well, do you think it's also like tying back to the staffer class? It's like when you have a staff full of like really Ivy League educated like women and like predominantly LGBT men who never hang out with like typical straight men, like it kind of becomes that weird loop of like, how are you going to relate to a guy who wants to pound beer and watch football if no one on your staff knows what that means?
Yeah.
Yeah, like I don't drink
absolutely.
beer, let's be real. I drink chick drinks, but like I don't know, like I hung out with guys who did that, like, always. Like, my fiance's the kind of guy who does that. He just came in here, but he's not paying attention. But I think it's just, like, an energy thing, if that makes sense. Like, honestly, I said this before, Kamala's probably cooler in many ways than how Democratic men are perceived, if that makes sense.
Definitely.
Like, I've had people say that Kamala seems cooler, but I'm not going to vote for her anyway because of, like, the way Democrats are, but it's not a Kamala problem, which is, like, interesting to me because the thing is, like, that's what I kind of ties back to what I was saying at the very beginning. Like, people aren't specifically voting for or against a candidate based on race and gender, but they're voting based on, like, the energy and the vibes, which are a lot more like...
It comes down to the aura. If you have insane aura, you win.
Yeah, exactly. And, like, that's the other thing. Like, I think Hillary, there was a lot of people that didn't vote for her because they hated Hillary for being a woman. I'm sorry. Like, there's a lot of people... Kitty, please stop whining. Anyway, she's whining. She's whining at the bathroom door. The thing is, like, I remember there was, like, my friend's evil ex-boyfriend literally was like, I can't vote for Hillary because what if she bombs the country when she's on her period? I'm like, how do you think... that's... It was just so frustrating because me and her were just sitting there like...
Crazy.
Well, and it's become kind of a meme on election Twitter I've seen of, like, I would vote for a woman, but it has to be someone who, like, I could see standing up to Putin. And when I was talking to my friend, like, when I asked about Kamala Harris, they used the word weak again. And I sensed an undertone of, like, oh, she's not physically a strong man who can beat up the leader of another country, therefore she's weak, was kind of the sense I got.
Well, I was gonna say, there were like a ton of like TikTok and like Instagram Reel ads, or not ads, but like videos going around of just military propaganda, like dudes just jumping out of an airplane, like me like going to a third world country because, like, I don't know, Taylor Swift told a bunch of people to vote for, like, Kamala, and then I was like, wow.
That's the other thing, though. The most psychotic thing I saw, actually, or I heard about that, was that guy, the Madison Square Garden guy whose name I can't remember, Hinchcliffe or whatever. He joked that Travis Kelce should become O.J. Simpson. And I was like...
So weird.
I was like, are you joking that he should murder his partner? And that's apparently funny, and his partner is evil because she said to vote for Democrats. I was like, that is the kind of thing that's just so beyond the pale to me. And it's like, people were focused on the Puerto Rican stuff, which was horrible, obviously. But in a sense, I just, like, kind of did a double take when I heard that, because, like, that was just kind of totally ignored. And I was like, that's just as bad to joke about, like, how women that endorse Democrats should be murdered by their partners.
Well, like, I think Republicans can get away with talking so much shit about Democrats. Trump will say, like, all these Democratic cities and states are a hellhole. Like, I think that's part of that, where, like, if a Democrat was, like, on stage joking about, like, I don't know, Kimberly Guilford should be murdered or whatever, like, I think it would have actually gotten a lot more backlash. But
and the thing is, like, honestly, like, I just thought that was a completely insane thing to say, because, like, it's just so funny. Like, Brittany Mahomes, like, she was, like, a Trump voter or whatever, and it was just so funny because there was all the stuff that came out, like, Brittany is horrified at how they're treating Taylor. I'm like, yeah. It's just funny, because the thing is, like, that's how a lot of conservative women think. It's like, oh, I vote Republican because my family's Republican, and then it's like, oh, my new friend Taylor, she seems like a nice woman. Why is she being shit on by these people? I don't get it. It's like a cognitive dissonance almost.
Right.
So you think, like, this nice person, there's nothing wrong with them. They just, like, might disagree on some topics.
That's just, but there's, where the funny at?
It's not funny. It's really creepy, actually.
Well, just kind of like, I feel like it's the kind of joke you say, and then people should, like, all just kind of like pause the party and like look at you and be like, bro, what the fuck? Like, that's not.
Well, I think it kind of flopped in the arena, honestly. That was like the reaction.
Yeah, I think it did, because everyone's like, I don't think, the thing is, Taylor Swift has a pretty high approval. Like, when all the Travis Kelce stuff first came out, it was so funny. All the congressional reporters went and asked, like, the senators from Kansas and Missouri what they thought about it. They're like, Taylor Swift endorsed Democrats. What do you think about this? And they're like, we like them. They're cute together. Good for Travis. Because, like, I'm sorry, but the median Republican senator is probably more normal than, like, the median MAGA Twitter freak.
Yeah.
Like, Roger Marshall and, like...
most Twitter users, to be honest.
Yeah, like, Roger Marshall was like, that's nice. She seems like a nice young woman. I'm like, okay, Roger.
It's like, okay, time to go back to the retirement home. Let's go. Well, anyways, I think we're going to go...
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you for letting me yap.
Thanks so much. I was going to say, do you want to do the progressive outro? We'll give you the honor.
Hi, I'm Dhaaruni. This has been the Progressive Podcast. Thank you guys for having me. And yeah, Coda.